Hi, I'm Alicia May, and this is Experience CTN, where we're going to learn more about CTN volunteers and producers who have supported community media over the past years. Today I'm here with Barbara Lucas, the producer and host of The Green Room. Hi, Barbara. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here.
Thanks for coming. So tell us, what is The Green Room?
Well, it's a monthly show that we've been doing for about 6 years. It's a collaboration between CTN and Washtenaw County Environmental Health Division, and it's about half hour or sometimes down to 15 minutes, and we get different guests that are from the local community and sometimes from national, sometimes we get like a professor or somebody that's coming into town to give a presentation, and so I find out and I get them on the show, so that's fun. But it's always on environmental topics.
It is, and not only is it environmental topics, but sometimes we also have critters on the show, right, as well?
Yep. One time I met a gentleman I met him in Detroit, and he is working at the Cranbrook Science Institute with bat conservation. And so I asked him if he'd come on the show, and he agreed, and he showed up with these 2 boxes. And I said, "What's in the boxes?" He said, "Well, my bats." And I said, "You're kidding." He wanted to bring the bats on the show, and I said, well, gosh, we've never had animals on the show before, because usually we're just discussing things. And he brought his bats right on the show, and it was really one of the best shows we've ever done. It was really great.
Yeah, we actually have a clip from that, so why don't we take a look?
Great.
So bats are the only mammals in the world that can fly. No other mammal in the world can fly. And since they're mammals that fly, they have to consume large numbers of insects or large amounts of pollen and nectar or fruit or fish, whatever it is that they eat. All of our bats in Michigan eat insects, and I brought him a little something to eat. We'll see if he's hungry. This kind of bat right here would eat 2,000 to 5,000 insects every single night flying around. So right now he's eating a little mealworm. Wow. And bats flying around use ultrasonic sounds. So as they fly around at night, they give off these sounds, bounces off of things, and they know where things are even in pitch darkness. Now bats aren't blind, but they use this ultrasonic sound to be able to navigate pitch darkness. So what I have here is a bat detector, and it picks up the ultrasonic sounds. So if I move the bat around,
oh my goodness.
It's echolocating right now. Did you see it?
Wow, that's so cool to see that, well, to hear the echolocation, but then to see the little bat eating. And I love that he has a bat box there too, because bats are so important to our environment. Let's talk a little bit about that, how the show is wrapped around the environment so much. Give me maybe a few other topics that you guys have discussed in the past.
Well, we had a local guest, which he was the bat expert. Turned out he'd actually been on like David Letterman and things like that, and I had no clue that he was so famous. But it turns out that we have a lot of local experts in town. I mean, there's just so many people. And one of my favorite, in fact, most knowledgeable experts was one of the youngest that I've ever had on the show. Sarah Toner was only 15 when she came on the show to talk about birding. And she just was so knowledgeable, and she was great at explaining the concepts. So I hear you have a clip of that as well.
Yeah, let's take a look at Sarah in action.
Okay, great.
So those are called the confusing fall warblers for obvious reasons. But once you get, it's pretty easy to learn those plumages, but they're also aided by other parts of the bird. The feathers don't make a bird, and so the general shape, it's called GIS, General Impression of Shape and Size, a military term that we use to describe the silhouette of the bird, how it's acting, how big it is, and that sort of creates an impression of the bird that is very, very identifiable.
Would that be like the difference between a hairy and a downy woodpecker? I remember you taught me that the length of the bill is contrasting with the body is smaller for the downy than for the hairy?
For the example of the hairy and downy woodpeckers, they're basically identical in terms of plumage, except that hairy is about twice the size, or maybe 1.5 times the size of downy. Downy's about that big, hairy's that big. But when you can't judge size, which is very hard to do in the field, the bill length is the best way. And of course bill length factors into the general impression, but Harry's bills are about the length of their head, while Downey's are much shorter.
Great job. I love seeing all that B-roll of the birds and the owls and the hawks. What's it like to get that B-roll for the show?
Well, I tend to do a lot of things out in the environment and take footage wherever I go a lot, and so this was really fun to be able to, utilize some of the footage I'd collected. Some of the other shows we've done in the past have shown just a freestanding movie that I've done for one client or another, because I freelance for municipal governments and sometimes nonprofits, and I'll make movies, and so CTN has allowed us to put the shows within the green room.
Yeah.
So that's worked out really well. My main client is Washtenaw County, and so some of the shows are related to things that the county is information they're trying to get out. For instance, how to clean up a mercury spill, or what kind of recycling, programs they're rolling out. So it's been really useful for Washtenaw County.
Yeah, I definitely think that one of the main things that always intrigued me about Green Room was that it was always about environmental topics, but that could relate to the county and the city, like the Vision Zero plan. I mean, that's such a big hot topic right now. I mean, pedestrian deaths is just, nobody wants those. So when you had the Vision Zero group on, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what we should be talking about right now. So kudos to you.
Yeah, it's been great, because that was a Washtenaw Biking and Walking Coalition, so we were able to get, and also we had the Common Cycle, they're another bicycle group in town, so we've had a lot of different nonprofits on as well.
Yeah, definitely. Talking everything to environmental, to the water systems, right? How to wash your car on your grass and not in your driveway and stuff like that. So lots of good information. So I want to segue, and I want to learn more about you as a freelancer. How did you start in this field?
Well, I'd gone back to school about 15 years ago for a master's in environmental policy at the University of Michigan, and I started working for a documentary filmmaker and did an internship with him. And from that, I started taking classes in how to make my own videos. I started a little company called Insight Video, and I started marketing, myself as somebody that can make videos on environmental topics. And then I had so many of them that's how CTN was like, well, we'll show your movies. From there I started doing radio production. So I also have a show called The Green Room that airs on WEMU. And sometimes my shows for The Green Room on CTN sort of help me learn what might be an interesting topic to do on the radio, such as you have a clip of this woman who came on the show. I asked her to talk about the environmental impacts of a baby's first year, and she was talking about that, and then suddenly she started talking about something far more interesting, and we kind of ran out of time, but I then later did a radio show on the topic. So that was pretty cool. I learned a lot from her.
Interesting. Yeah, let's take a look at that clip.
Okay, great. Formula. We've got to feed and raise the cows, we have to process and sterilize and package and transport. So how can we reduce that footprint?
Donor milk.
Yeah?
So I'm a big advocate of breast milk, donor milk.
Okay.
And there's a big movement nowadays to bring that back. In past there have been milk sharing among moms and in neighborhoods and communities, and it's really coming back. So there are milk banks that are able to provide milk to more fragile infants, but in babies who are healthy, you can have milk sharing opportunities that are available through connections online that you can make. So that's a really good one too.
So you said it's coming back. Do you mean that used to be a traditional thing throughout history and now?
Exactly, and I think it kind of during the 80s and 90s wasn't as popular, and I think over probably the last 5 to 10 years, people there are more advocates in the human milk banking world that are trying to raise the awareness around the importance of breast milk for infants, and that if you can't breastfeed, formula is not your only option. There are other moms who have excess milk who are able and willing to share that with other babies.
That's great.
I've actually provided donor milk myself.
Wow, wonderful. Really interesting stuff. I never would have thought about donor milk and how important it is.
Oh, it was a whole new world for me too.
Yeah. So it was 6 years ago that Green Room got started. How did the CTN partnership and Green Room really grow and continue to be what it is now?
Well, it's been a really flexible thing, and we really appreciate CTN's being flexible about it, because we started out, with this backlog. I had about a dozen at least movies, maybe there were more like 20, that we used in each segment. And then we ran out of movies, so I started using just footage that I'd grabbed around town or on my travels. And then sometimes we don't have any footage; we'll just use still photographs that I've taken around town. So it's been kind of really organic in terms of each show can be different length. Or CTN has been extremely flexible and accommodating, and it's just been wonderful. The facilities here are just great, and the community, I don't think, knows a lot about CTN. I mean, the fact that it's here. And one thing that we love about it is it's not just reaching the people that watch it on television. It's reaching a lot of people through the links, because those links can be either embedded on a nonprofit's website, or they can be sent to relevant groups through emails. I mean, I think a lot of the people who watch this actually watch it online instead of necessarily in their living room on TV.
Right, yeah, you can watch it online at a2gov.org/watchctn. And then you can also catch it on Channel 19. When can we air that? Or I'm sorry, when can people catch that on the channel?
Well, it runs monthly. I'm all different times of the week, actually. So I pretty much tell people to just go to, we have a link called ewashtenaw.org/greenroom. And that way they can get the latest schedule, or they can click on the link and watch it on their laptops or whatever.
Perfect. So Barbara, have you always been an environmental activist? I mean, was it something that you just rolled over one day out of bed and you were like, I'm going to create the Green Room and I'm going to start talking about these topics? Or how did that come about for you?
Well, I've always been interested in nature. I went into a health field, actually, but when my children were born 30 years ago, I suddenly felt I had to do something to make the world a better place for their, they're going to be around for a long time. So I started doing a lot of volunteer work and continuing in my health-related field. But I felt that the volunteer work wasn't really getting enough done. I wasn't going, being as effective as I'd like to be. So that's when I went back to school, as I mentioned, for a degree in environmental policy. And then in terms of doing anything in radio and television, video, I had no idea I'd be doing that. I just knew that I wanted to communicate environmental messages. One alternative would have been to be an environmental educator, where I would go into schools or that type of thing, but I'm actually not great with little kids. So this suits me much better. Now, I didn't go into I didn't take broadcasting classes, and sometimes I feel like that's been a little bit, of a learning curve for me, trying to, feel at ease, with cameras and all that. Editing is a wonderful thing, which we don't do much of at CTN, so you have to be, kind of understand, people have to be forgiving. The audience needs to be forgiving of that. Radio is, I can do a lot of editing, so that's been great.
Yeah. It's interesting to see your progression, how you kind of flipped careers, right? And then you are really self-trained in this medium. And I think that's great. I think more people can do that and understand that if there's a hot topic they want to talk about, they can kind of look to you, right, and how you did that and made this career for yourself. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and CTN has been really helpful that way. You don't have to be, somebody that's got a lot of experience to do something here. It's just been really wonderful.
Right. What would you say to other people who maybe aren't so concerned about the environment, or what could we do to help the environment?
That's two different questions, I think. I just think that the environment, all the different topics that people are concerned about, whether it be human rights or immigration, on and on, they're all extremely important. But if we don't have a planet to be worrying about immigration and civil rights, where it's, so it's the umbrella kind of topic. It's the thing that, it's the Rock of Gibraltar that we're all on. And in terms of what do I tell people that want to help out, it's whatever moves you, because if it doesn't move you, you're not going to pursue it. So if say trees are what move you, then you should do stuff related to trees. But if something more along the lines of climate change is what moves you, then whatever floats your boat.
Definitely. Well said. You kind of touched on this, but just one more time, why should other organizations or other people utilize and support CTN?
Well, it's one of the best kept secrets in town. It's wonderful facilities. Everybody here is super friendly, and it's just something that we really, some people might say, well, it's not a big audience. You don't get a ton of people watching TV at home. Well, nowadays with the internet, you can have as big an audience as you want. You can put it up on your Facebook page. You can put it, out to all, Twitter it out or whatever, the link to your show. So it can really get a wide audience.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. Mm-hmm. And one last time, where can people go to learn more about the Green Room?
Well, the Washtenaw County site is ewashtenaw.org/greenroom.
Awesome. Barbara, thanks so much for coming on the show. I can't wait to see what other shows you produce in the future.
Well, thanks so much for having me here, Alicia.
You're welcome. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more on Experience CTN. In the meantime, why not come on in and experience CTN for yourself? Email ctn@a2gov.org for more information, and watch other CTN programs by visiting a2gov.org/watchctn. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at CTN Ann Arbor. I want to thank our crew, Matt Drake, Gage Shaughnessy is his name, actually. Justin Wright, Phil Booz, Jill Andrews, and I'm your host, Alicia May. We'll see you next time.